And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 98th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 430th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, October 18th, 2018. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred Wednesday morning when CBS Sports dropped its list of the top 101 players in college basketball. Both Romeo and Juwan were on the list, Romeo at number 15 and Juwan at number 31. Here's the list of teams that also placed at least two players in the top 50. Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, Virginia, Gonzaga, Nevada, Michigan State. Look at any preseason top 25, and those teams are almost always somewhere in the top 10. Indiana is the outlier in terms of having two players on the list, but being a borderline top 25 team. Now, perhaps you think the preseason evaluations are wrong and Indiana should be ranked right alongside those schools, or perhaps you agree that the rest of the Hoosiers roster just isn't proven enough yet to warrant that kind of preseason respect. The right answer will probably end up being somewhere in the middle. But what is undeniable is that no matter how cohesive of a team unit you build, competing at the highest levels of college basketball requires having at least a couple and probably even one or two more of the best individual players in the country. The sad reality is that it's been a while, probably 2013, since Indiana was seen as having at least two such players entering a season. But this year, Romeo and Juwan should give Indiana a 1-2 punch that allows the Hoosiers to compete against every team on their schedule. And Indiana would be wise to take advantage this year because it's possible we may have to wait a year or two before having multiple players so high on this list again, depending on the development of guys like Justin Smith, Jerome Hunter, and others. Still, Archie Miller's recruiting success does suggest that multiple Indiana players appearing on such preseason lists in the future will become more of the norm than the exception. And that will be a good sign that Indiana is ready to consistently go toe-to-toe with the nation's best, just like it is this year. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, he is the Kirk Ferentz of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati, the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and one of the world's most renowned bracketologists.
It's not Joe Lenardi. It's not Jerry Palm. It is Andy Bottoms from over at Assembly Call.
He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your Bottoms line from the last week in IU basketball?
You know, sometimes when you put the coach in there, I can't tell whether it's meant as a compliment or an insult. So it's unclear at this point.
Well, after last week.
Based on well, I know, but then he's kind of a jerk because he's throwing up, some ungodly amount late in the fourth quarter. So maybe you think I'm a poor sport. It's tough to say. Or that I have some kind of lifetime contract or something like he does with Iowa or whatever's going on. So at any rate, that one was just in a gray area. I wasn't really sure. No, it's funny as we sit here on Thursday, even though we're a little bit late. 2 weeks from right now, we'll be doing our first true post-game show. We did the Hoosier Hysteria show, but the post-game show for the exhibition game will be happening right at this time in 2 weeks. So we've only got 14 days left to kind of find ways to spend our time and get ready. And we too, like the team, will work through the kinks in the after the exhibition game, but excited to know that that's not too far away on the schedule and get our first real glimpse of these guys playing against somebody other than themselves in spliced together footage on social media. So the beginning of the season has nearly arrived, and it's one that we've been waiting for. And as we have, interacted with fans and things like that, I think the excitement for this is right up there for me with what as excited as people were when they were the preseason number one a few years ago, which seems a little bit odd for a team that nobody's really picking to win the Big Ten compared to that. But I would say in the years we've been doing the show, I think the fan excitement and interest level certainly rivals what it was, a handful of years ago.
Yeah. And to my right, he is a columnist for The Big Lead and a co-host of The Hangover, but you know him as Indiana radio's most opinionated, polarizing, over-the-top personality.
I pretty much have an opinion on everything.
He is Ryan Phillips.
If you don't fawn all over him, he pretty much ostracizes you.
Ryan, do you have any indignant and or petty rants for us this week?
Yeah, I want to get to the poll at some point that you put out this week, but I
I think the big news of the week, honestly, and it's not specifically Indiana related, is the stuff that came out from this college basketball corruption trial. And we've got news that players like Zion Williamson were looking for money. And I think that relates back to Duke. And you have to realize, I think we're starting to get to the point with this that while some people may not be mentioned specifically in this Adidas trial, what we've learned from this is that nobody, even college basketball's sacred cow down there in Durham, is clean in this. And this is the way that business has been done in college basketball for a long time. And the whole thing needs to be cleaned up. I know a lot of people were fearing what would come out from this trial and how it would damage college basketball. I think it's a good thing because I think it's exposing a lot of stuff that needed to be out in the open, and it's finally exposing certain people for the hypocrites they really are. So I'm sure certain people. I'm sure we will talk about that as the year goes on because I'm sure that more will come out. But I just think that was worth watching this week as that trial winds down. That I think a lot of things have popped up that are targeting some people I don't think a lot of people thought would get dragged into this and now are.
All right, here's what we're going to talk about this week. The NBA announced a major initiative with the G League that could change the calculus for elite high school seniors trying to decide their next step. We'll discuss that. Coach K made some ridiculous comments. We have to get Ryan's reaction to those. And then in the first installment of a new segment called Ryan's Being Stupid Again, we're going to debate him on the assertion he's made several times on this show that Indiana may actually...
I did not agree to this segment, by the way. I did not agree to the segment title.
Well, that actually came from an email from a listener. So out of respect for the listener, since it was his idea, we had to call the segment that. So
no truth to the rumor that listener was my dad or anything like that. I don't want anything or one of my burner accounts either.
No truth. And then with whatever time we have left, we will answer your questions. All of that coming on this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio. Before we do all that, before we get to this week's top story, I want to remind you real quick about the best way to shop online for great deals on IU basketball and football tickets. Just remember the URL iutickets.shop. It will take you right to SeatGeek, where you can immediately find the best deals on IU basketball tickets, other sports tickets, concert tickets, and more. As a bonus, you can use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $20 off your first purchase. And when you use that URL, iutickets.shop, we actually get paid a commission for referring you. So it is a great way to support the show. Coach, I'm wondering if you might have any ideas what we could do with the extra revenue that we're going to get from people using iutickets.shop.
Beer, cheese curds, and music. It doesn't get any better.
Works for me. Beer, cheese curds, and music. But first, you need to buy tickets. And the best way to do it is with the URL iutickets.shop. And remember, promo code ASSEMBLY for $20 off your first purchase. Again, it is iutickets.shop.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so let's talk about the top story, which broke earlier today. ESPN's Jonathan Givony reported that starting in the summer of 2019, the G League will offer what they are calling select contracts worth $125,000 for that first year to elite prospects who are at least 18 years old but not yet eligible for the NBA draft. As Givony explained it, they will target recent or would-be high school graduates who otherwise would have likely spent just one season playing college basketball, the so-called one-and-dones, enticing them not only with the six-figure salary, but then the opportunities to benefit from NBA infrastructure, off-court development programs, and just I guess the prestige of being a professional. Although you could certainly debate whether there's more prestige being a high-profile player at a big-time college program or
whether you'll actually get more money.
Yeah, well, and what's funny about that is obviously lots of reactions came out. Adrian Wojnarowski had a really good one. He said, "I have doubts about how many top players will go this route. Some, yes, but G League is full of early connecting flights, long bus rides, small gyms. It isn't glamorous. Big-time NCAA ball still has the trappings of exposure, packed houses, private jets, and you'll get paid there too." So it's interesting. It's certainly an interesting development. Maybe suggestive of a bigger initiative to come. I don't know. Maybe this is the first step of something bigger. But Ryan, how did this strike you when you heard the news, and how big of an impact do you think it'll actually have on guys bypassing college and taking this route?
I think it's a step in the right direction, or maybe they're moving in the right direction, but I don't think that this is going to lure guys. Some guys who maybe are going to struggle in college academically may do it instead of going to, you've seen some guys go play overseas now. But the fact that they'll get plucked and be able to play and all that stuff, sure, that'll be great. But I still think the top guys are going to go to college. And the reason why is, as you said, exposure. Most of these schools, you think, well, the NBA has world-class facilities and all this. Well, the most of these universities have the same level, if not better, facilities than what the G League and NBA teams are going to give you. So I don't think there's a huge draw there. It's a step in the right direction to be able to say, okay, we'll pay you to skip college. And I've always thought that the G League, what I thought the solution would be, and my suggestion for a while has been, let high school kids go to the draft, but they can't play in the NBA for the first year. They have to play in the G League. So you get your contract and you get all that stuff, and it's a risk for the NBA teams because you'll lose out basically on a year of usefulness. But you will be a professional. You'll be drafted, but you have to wait a year and play in the G League. I've kind of thought that was the path. You're not getting paid. Again, given what the shoe companies are dropping, $125,000 ain't that much. So I think it's a step, sort of a move in the right direction, but I don't think it's going to be that big a lure for guys unless they were pondering skipping college anyway.
Two other interesting points. I thought, Rob Doster had an interesting one. Someone mentioned that, hey, now maybe shoe companies can actually, get, above board deals with these guys. And as he said, well, the shoe companies have a lot of money invested in the college program. So they're probably still going to want those players going to the college programs. And as Brian Snow said, you said exposure. There's two different types of exposure, right? There's the exposure of being in the G League in front of NBA teams, but there's also the exposure of, now you're playing against real men and you really get exposed for what you are. Whereas you might be able to hide in college a little bit against kind of lesser players because they're not professionals. So
sure. And there's the idea of playing in college. You're going to be playing in more high pressure situations than you are in the G League too, yeah. So there's kind of, or at least perceived pressure situations and all that. So I don't know.
Andy, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I thought the exposure thing was interesting because you think about a guy like Hamidou Diallo that went to Kentucky. I mean, he was going to be the first kind of they talked about him being like a none and done where he enrolled early, was going to redshirt. And I think at the time, even looking back now, you'd say he'd have been wiser to go in before he played a minute of college basketball and do it that way, because what happened after that was it kind of reaffirmed every fear they had about him, where he was a super athlete, but couldn't shoot the ball, didn't really have a great basketball IQ. And so he ended up, he still got drafted this year, but he fell a lot further. And I think a year prior would have gone a lot further. And that was with the guy who, even kind of got exposed playing college basketball in that way. And so now you look at guys who are going to be, going against guys who are really trying to earn their way into the league. And for those guys, the light at the end of the tunnel for them is, hey, I might get called up to an NBA team this year. For these guys, that's not a possibility in their 1 year that's there. So there's a different level of motivation where everybody's going to be out to get these guys. So I mean, it's good for people to have the option that want to do that and that, college isn't for them. I think that's fine. I just don't know that it's it's just an obvious choice that a lot of people are going to take. And I think until a couple people do it and they see that it can work out, I don't really know that the Darius Bazley or Baisley was going to do that. But now it sounds like even he's going to skip the G League, where he was going to go to Syracuse, then he was going to go to the G League. Now it doesn't sound like he's going to do that. He's just going to wait a year and enter the draft. And that was one of the things people said about that scenario as well.
Yeah.
Does he just go get exposed there and then he ends up hurting himself in the long run?
So I think we all kind of agree. I mean, it's interesting. It's nice to have the option, but probably not going to have that big of an impact, really, except maybe setting the going rate for top players. As Coach said in the chat, 125,000 or I'm going to the G League, to the colleges. So, who knows? But I guess we're all pretty much in agreement with that, right?
Yeah, I think they're sort of moving in the right direction, but it's going to take a lot more than that, I think, to lure guys away from college and the exposure that you're going to get in college.
Yep. Okay.
Plus
coming up on the assembly call, let's get to that in just a second, Ryan. Okay. We have to discuss the asinine and disingenuous comments that Coach K made this week in response to questions about the Jim Gatto Adidas trial in New York. Ryan, I'm guessing you'll have a thing or two to say about that, so stick with us here on the assembly call. Sorry, I'd already started the music.
Oh, no worries. What I was going to say is, and we just leave it for the people in the chat, is that I'm not sure there are G League groupies. And in college, guys are going to have plenty of opportunities for extracurricular activities. So you may not think of that as a lure, but it definitely is.
There aren't any G League post-game shows.
It's true.
Pretty sure.
Fort Wayne Mad Ants don't have a post-game show?
They should. They should. Yeah. Well, the other thing I heard people say was they could start to get like endorsement money sooner, but I also,
I think it's going to be lower.
Well, I think somebody kind of made the point of like, yeah, nobody's going to these games, and unless all of a sudden the influx of these guys, whoever goes, makes there be more people who actually care about, G League teams and attend games, you're not. Yeah, you might be able to get something out of that, but it's still, your real exposure in that regard doesn't come until you're in the NBA anyway.
Yeah. I've been to some G League games here in the Texas Legends, and they're actually relatively well attended, and the stadium is nice. Like it's nice, but it certainly isn't playing like a Big Ten game.
Yeah, and actually the G League can be entertaining because it's really up tempo and there's not a whole lot of defense, and it's it's like watching a Warriors game every night. It's up tempo and high scoring and all that, and you see a lot of skill. They're actually pretty entertaining, and it's actually a good place for guys to develop now, where it wasn't before. Before it was like if you were in the G League, you were in purgatory. Now you can actually develop down there.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of good players that are down there that you're going up against. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be something these guys are going to.
No, but go to college and build your profile. It's like Christian Watford has spent some time in the G League and had a chance to develop and all that stuff. But that guy is a legend in one of the 10 biggest college basketball towns that there is forever.
He should never buy a drink in Bloomington ever.
No, if he does, the whole city should be ashamed.
Yeah,
that is for sure. Okay, so we have a special announcement. We're doing these Chatmob inductions. Last week, we inducted the great Megan Mahaffey. And this week, we have another inductee. It was an obvious next choice. It is the great Brian Tonsoni, the coach. He is the next inductee. And I suppose, we could have done this on night when he was actually going to be on the show. But I thought it was a little bit more fitting to do it on night when he is there with his people in the Chatmob doing his thing. I mean, very few people have been as supportive to the show as he has been, not just in terms of the Chatmob and spreading the word, but also, coming on and becoming, a part of our rotation. And his insight has kind of been like a missing link. Like the one thing that we don't have is coaching experience, and he does and provides incredible insight. He let us know his favorite player is Quinn Buckner, his favorite moment, the 1987 national championship. And of course, we know what fan club he is in. He is in the Archie Miller fan club because he has a massive crush on Archie Miller, as we know. So, Coach, congratulations. I know we got a little bit of a late start tonight, and Ryan may have to pop off early. But if you want to come hang out with us afterwards, we'll be happy to talk with you afterwards. But
he was even doing intrepid reporting for us at the tailgate last weekend, getting scooped from Rabjon. So, I mean,
I know,
you cannot outwork me.
Exactly.
There you go.
and that is why you were a Chatmobber. By the way, I do have a couple of other fun little drops that I got from last week's show. Here's this is Megan talking about Coach Tonsoni.
Super, super great guy.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember. I think she was actually talking about Victor Oladipo when she said that. But anyway,
I thought it was
congratulations, Coach.
Apropos.
Yes. Okay. So let's go on to segment 2 if you guys are ready. That first segment was 1445. Andy, 1445.
9:15.
9:15. So we got 8:55. Okay, 8:55 for this segment. All right, so let's do it. Ryan gets to talk about his favorite subject.
Yeah, what a joke.
It really is a joke. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll get into this, but we'll save it for this segment.
Yeah.
I'm really getting sick of him. That's all I have to say.
You guys all know my feelings. I'm interested to hear yours more than that. I mean, I'll talk about it, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
I bought into it big time.
That's what I think. That's what I think. That's what I think. I think after that 2010 national championship, they had 4 years where they didn't make the Final Four, and 2 where they got bounced early, and he decided to go the Calipari route. And
I think it's been going on longer than that.
Oh, well, maybe so. Maybe so. Okay. Well, let's talk about it in a second. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. If you want to get replays of our show, listen to our daily Banner Morning IU news updates, or subscribe to our free IU basketball email newsletter, visit assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to participate in our unedited live broadcasts,
Chatmobbers,
or watch those replays, then check out our YouTube channel. You will be privy to all of the between segment banner that doesn't make it into the radio show or podcast edit.
It's just guys clowning around.
Indeed. Come clown around with us on YouTube, youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. And guys, I'm sure you've been following, just like I have, and a lot of our audience, the first of the 3 trials resulting from the FBI investigation that has been going on in New York. Closing arguments were actually delivered on Thursday. And this trial has really laid bare a lot of what we've all assumed was kind of going on in college basketball for a long time, with shoe companies paying players to go to certain schools, and even the schools themselves offering money for players. And, what has been a little bit surprising, I suppose, is how many big current names in the sport have been brought into it, most notably Bill Self in Kansas, also Duke freshman Zion Williamson, one of the latest names brought into it. And so with all of this going on, you might expect the dean of college basketball coaches, Duke's Mike Krzyzewski, to, have something thoughtful to say on the subject, right? No. If you missed it, here's basically what Coach K had to say when he was asked about this. He said, "I think it's minute. It's a blip. It's not what's happening." And this basically echoed comments that Roy Williams made, where he basically said, "Gall darn, he was dumbfounded. That world that they're explaining out there, that world that is on national news, I'm not familiar with, period." Number one, I know that you guys don't believe them. I don't think anybody believes them. But, Brian, let's get your thoughts on this first. I mean, I guess, what is even the purpose of being so disingenuous to pretend like you don't even know that it's going on? I mean, I don't know. Like, I read that and it almost made me angry. I don't get angry, but it almost made me angry that he would be, I guess, just that disrespectful to the people who care about college basketball and tune into that, and who, make him this hero that he is. I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way.
I've said this for a while, and over the last 10 years, you've seen a shift in Mike Krzyzewski, and I think it's always been there, but you're starting to see it seep in more and more, becoming more like his mentor, Bob Knight. And you've seen it in his irritation with the media at times. I mean, you talk to people who deal with him on a daily basis, and one of the things he's horrible to student media in Durham. He's horrible to reporters that question him. If you don't fall in line with whatever he does, if you challenge him on questions, he'll basically ostracize you. He'll rip you. He'll do whatever. He has threatened to pull, behind the scenes, threatened to pull credentials from people who question him and talk back to him and things like that. I mean, he's not the guy that's been built up in the media. He's a nice, and quite frankly, he could be the nicest guy in the world, but the way he deals with people professionally, I've always known this was there. And we've talked about it before repeatedly. And
episode 366.
And other people have talked about it repeatedly. It's not just me. But what I'll say is, in this case, and I talked to Kent Sterling about this week when I was on, if one of these guys, one of these coaches would just step up and say, "You know what? This is the way the game is played. I wish it wasn't. Here's what I know. Everybody else is doing it. And, I wish this wasn't this way, and I'll try and stop it, but we all need to get together and do something about this," and was just honest about it. And everybody would respect that guy and be like, "You know what? I get it. You have a contract. You have a family. You have to compete with these other guys. It's not your fault. Like, this is the way this has been built up. Let's work to a solution." But denying that it even happens or that you have any idea what it is, come on. You really think that Mike Krzyzewski is getting 3 out of the top 5 players in the country and not doing this stuff? Zion Williamson was asking for a house, a job for his parents, money, all this stuff. And we're supposed to believe that he went to Duke for free? I mean, come on.
It's the brotherhood. The brotherhood of Duke,
yeah,
Ryan.
Exactly, yeah.
One of these coaches needs to just pull a Pete Bell from Blue Chips.
Yeah.
And just let it all out there.
And I said this, what I talked about it, and it's been compared to this a lot, but I talked about this with Kent too, is it's like the steroid era in baseball. If one of those guys had come out and said, "Yeah, I did steroids because I had to compete. I was going to lose money as a free agent if I didn't do this and I didn't compete, that's money, that's food out of my family's mouth. Everybody would have respected that guy and been like, yeah, we get it. Okay, it sucks.
Yeah.
You're in a tough situation. But
we all know now this is how the game is played. Everybody understands.
And calling it a blip or acting like you're not concerned or you're not paying attention.
Not what's happening. It's like,
shut up. Like, it's gaslighting. I mean, it's just like, nope, nothing to see here. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. I have not been reading about this every day, praying that my name doesn't show up. Nope, that's not me. Like, come on. Every college coach in the country is checking this every morning to make sure, oh God, please don't be, even if they're innocent, they're checking it to make sure there's no, like, they're not going to catch any shrapnel from this bomb. But no, I just, it's so disingenuous, but honestly, it's exactly what I expected from Mike Krzyzewski.
Well, I mean, there's essentially two options, right? If you're saying something like that, you're either willfully ignorant of what's going on, or you're lying to everybody. And
there's
when you
no
listen
chance they're ignorant.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. And so then you look at these guys who have such control over these programs and the way they act. There's, option A of the scenarios that I laid out is absolutely not even feasible to me. So yeah, this is the thing when, Pitino comes on and it's like, oh, I'm dumbfounded by this. I'm floored by this. I'm flabbergasted. I had no idea that this kind of thing was going on. Like, you just must think people are as dumb as humanly possible to actually believe that you don't know that that's going on, which is insulting, as you said, or you're just lying to everybody, which is really the far more likely of those two scenarios. And you're just hoping that, your name's not going to get caught up in it, which feels for virtually everyone inevitable at this point.
Hey, arrogance cuts both ways. It can be a driver of great success, and it can also be a reason why, you would lie like this and act like you can just tell whatever story you want publicly, as if people don't know that you're straight up lying to their face.
I like to feel
the same thing. Duke has the Lance Thomas thing, and I think William Avery, wasn't he caught up in some of that stuff, or
McGetty and all those guys?
Yeah. No, so some of this, it's like you can't even say that this is never even brought up with your program to a point where you can't acknowledge that it's happening. Like, there have been allegations of those kinds of things already
for years. Any top program's going to have allegations like that because that's the way the freaking game is played. By the way, I like to think that my arrogance is a driver of success. That's fair, right? Would you guys say? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
But you don't come on here and lie to our audience's face. And if you did, we wouldn't want you on the show. Like, that's the difference. These people, they come on there in these press conferences and they just act like that's okay to just come. And I realize, that's kind of part of the job.
And no one's ever going to call them out and be like, you're just a straight liar in a press conference, because they are who they are. And
because they bully people.
Exactly. And they have so much power that they can tell you, oh, you're going to challenge me. You don't get a credential anymore. I mean, they have the power to do that. So, I mean, Coach K is on a commercial every 5 minutes during March Madness. Like, you really think that the NCAA is going to go after that guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and like Dockage said, these guys get up and they preach about leadership. And then when push comes to shove, it's the last thing that they actually show.
Yep. Okay, coming up, those of you listening,
big fan of the show, Dan.
Friday night, big fan. Maybe switching over to high school football, so be sure to catch the replay at assemblycall.com. For everyone else, we're introducing a new segment. Ryan doesn't like the name. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Okay, nice. I think that was right on time, basically.
Sorry, I had to throw in the Dan Dockage thing. Anytime he gets mentioned.
I know. Big fan of the show.
Big fan of the show.
Big fan of the show. All right, good stuff. Yes, big difference between honest arrogance and deceitful arrogance. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The best players money can buy!
That movie just ages better and better.
I know. Every day.
Like, I mean, almost the only thing that we haven't seen actually happen in real life would be someone getting a tractor. And I'm sure, like, Fran McCaffrey has tried, but No one wants to take his tractors.
Yeah, that would be the funniest part of this. Like, no, Iowa didn't cheat because nobody wanted to go there. Like, there was no money changing hands.
Yeah. I mean, Fran Trace doesn't want a tractor. That's not going to change. Just because he's from Indiana. Come on. All right. So here we go. Segment 3. And by the way, we have a ton of questions, which is awesome. And so we'll get to them. And then Ryan, whatever questions we don't pick up when we do our Monday mailbag, we'll just pick up these extra questions.
Okay.
So this segment, let's just go as long as it's interesting.
Yep.
Ryan, we're always first.
We're always interesting.
Well, yeah, but sometimes our discussions can get a little.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry, we got to be rounding into mid-season form here because man, that's crazy. We do have a post-game show in 2 weeks. That's nuts. Nice of the season to kind of lay out that way though, so we get to knock out a radio show and a post-game show in one night the first week. That's nice, rather than like having to do a Thursday show and then the Friday post-game show or something. That's nice.
Yeah, last year's schedule sucked. I'm sorry. We had a rough go for a couple weeks there last year where we were all just like, where it was actually, the show was actually more interesting and more fun to do than the previous year, but it was brutal, the schedule.
Yeah, everything was so condensed.
Yeah, and the games were just,
oh man,
back to back to back, and they're all late, and yeah, it was tough.
Yeah,
and I can't even complain. You guys had it super late.
Okay, let's quit clowning around here and do some basketball talk.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. If you are a serious IU Hoops fan, then you need to be subscribed to our free IU basketball email newsletter.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
You will get our 6-banner Sunday news roundups, as well as our detailed post-game analysis emails once the season begins. This content is why more than 6,000 of your fellow IU fans are already subscribed to our list. And joining them is easy. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com.
Make no excuses.
Can we get some basketball, please?
All right, back to talking basketball with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. I'm Jerod Morris. So, Ryan, a listener took you to task. I received an email, and I want to read it here, and this is going to be the jumping off point for this segment. We won't say that this segment is officially called Ryan's Being Stupid Again. We'll just use that as the tentative name for tonight. And that is not something that I came up with or that Andy came up with. This was actually an email from Steve. The subject was Ryan's being stupid again, and here is the email. He said, I've heard on at least 2 occasions Ryan say, with no rationale to back it up, boy, next year we might be even better. Dude, I love you, but slow your roll. Next year we lose what, in my opinion, will be the backbone of our scoring, Juwan, Romeo, and Evan. Who's replacing all those buckets next year? Yes, the freshmen will be second-year guys, and that's a huge step up, but ask Ryan where 3 guaranteed double-digit scores next year are coming from. Yes, he can start his list with Justin Smith. So, Ryan, we will allow you to make your opening statement, because I will say that I've heard you make this claim before on the show, and and on Kent Sterling's show as well. And it's always struck me as a little bit curious, but not worth necessarily opening up a debate about. But I think it'll be fun because I don't necessarily agree with you. But let's hear your opening statement, and Andy, I don't know how you feel about it, although I have a hunch, and then we'll debate it.
By the way, Evan Fitzner is a part of the backbone of the team. When did that happen?
No, he said backbone of our scoring. I mean, okay, 40+% from downtown. That's tough.
I agree, but he may not even start. And we're betting on a lot there. I'm not saying he won't be good, but come on. All right, here's why I think that will be this will come to pass. And you lose Romeo, you lose Juwan, obviously huge misses. You also could be getting Trace Jackson Davis and Keon Brooks, or add your 5-star amazing player there. Plus, you will have a senior point guard in Devontae Green. You will have a sophomore, really good distributing guard in Rob Finney. You'll have Deron Davis as as a senior, assuming, everything goes well this year, you'll be a senior. You'll have Justin Smith as a junior. You'll have Jerome Hunter developed as well. You'll have a shooter in Demezy Anderson a year into the program. You'll have Race Thompson, who we all think is going to be really, really good in his second full year. You will have a guy in Clifton Moore who, super high ceiling. If he sticks around, maybe he becomes a scoring threat. Maybe he fills that Evan Fitzner role as a guy who can sort of play on the perimeter. He's not a pure shooter, but can sort of play on the perimeter and has the size to get in there. And then you have a guy like Jake Forrester. You have, all these guys will be a year older, and there's so much talent there. They may not have the high-end talent that they'll have this year, but they will have a bunch of really good players who can all play minutes, who can all do the things you need to do in the Big Ten. I do believe. I think that this team has more high ceiling players than they'll have next year, but it's not about the high ceiling players. It's about depth in college basketball now. It's about having a lot of guys who can do things. Plus, again, Justin Smith looks like he's headed to be a high ceiling player. Jerome Hunter, we all love and I think will be fantastic. And then you've got Rob Finney. You've got Race Thompson. You've got all these guys that you're beyond that. And if you want high-end talent, guess what? Trace Jackson Davis, Keon Brooks, whoever else will be added to that mix. So, yeah, I stick by that. I think that this team has a really nice ceiling on it. I think that the depth of the team will be so much better next year because these guys will all have a year in the system. And I think that, the biggest, as we've always said, there's a lot of freshmen on this team. The best thing about freshmen is that they become sophomores and they'll be that much better.
Andy, do you want to take a stab at this first?
Yeah, I see where I'm kind of like you. I've heard him make this statement. I see where he's coming from. And we've all talked about how this class can be a foundational one for the program and how much we look forward to watching the guys outside of Romeo, be 3-4 year players. So in that regard, I get it. I think the biggest question that I have is, certainly you're replacing Juwan and Romeo. I think in Juwan's case, you have a lot more guys lined up that you can at least think about, hey, they could replace him or replace him by committee, I think is the more likely approach. But you have a lot of front court depth of guys that are going to be around. So that part I can get. The part that I struggle with is the Romeo piece of, he's looked at this year because it's something that they didn't really have a year ago. And there's nobody really like him on the roster unless all of a sudden, Hunter is able to play a little bit more of that 2-guard, which is possible. Unless you do get Keon Brooks and maybe he's going to play, as a bigger wing in the backcourt and things like that. I think that's just positionally, if nothing else, the piece that makes me wonder, can the ceiling for next year's team with that, kind of no obvious replacement or even replacement by committee for him, can they really be better?
Like I think with Juwan, it's easy to say that you can replace him on paper because you look at guys like Justin and Jerome and they've got similar measurables.
Race Thompson too.
Yes. Okay. But what you lose with Juwan is your unquestioned leader. And how many times have we seen this program really struggle with leadership transitions? So
with a different coach though.
Okay. No, that's fine. And that's fair. But still, who's the leader? Like right now with Juwan this year, they have an unquestioned leader who not only does it from a personality standpoint, but has some skins on the wall, is a real player. You don't have anybody ready to step into that role next year. And granted, part of that is because, this year, a lot of that leadership is taken up by Juwan, but also Zach McRoberts, a guy that we haven't mentioned yet. And I realize his talent doesn't overwhelm people, but, there is something about the tone that he sets in practice. You're still going to have to replace that. And I think you can get more talented with his minutes going to somebody else. But I think it's at least worth mentioning that that's another real leader too. And that is one thing that this team has this year is 2 big-time leaders. And then, of course, just the prodigious scoring ability of Romeo Langford. So I think next year's team can be deep. But the other thing is, Ryan, I think you listed out all the guys, and that's great. The roster is going to be fine. Now put it into a lineup. What's your lineup with that team?
Because, I don't know, but I trust Archie to figure it out. I guess that's also where I stand.
That doesn't make any difference for this debate. That's what I'm saying.
I get it, but I'm saying I think that's part of it though, is that I trust the coaching to develop a leader. I trust the coaching staff to develop a leader. I trust Juwan to help develop a leader. I don't think he's just going to be I'm taking all the leadership and I'm not passing anything on.
No, I think that's true. That's true. That's a good point.
So I trust them to develop that leadership. Yeah, you can't name it right now, but I trust that somebody will step up. And I trust that this coaching staff will develop that. This coaching staff will develop players to fit in certain roles. Again, we've said they don't do a 1 through 5 point guard, shooting guard, wing, this, whatever. It's a sort of a mix of what they're going to do. And so you can get a guy, you look at Justin Smith and Jerome Hunter, and you're like, well, they're about the same size. They're about the same length. Are they going to take minutes from each other? No, they can both play at the same time. You can get Jake Forrester out there with Race Thompson. You could get these mix and match lineups because they're getting versatile guys. If you want to talk about Romeo Langford is a NBA talent, high-end guy. That's almost impossible to replace no matter who you get. You're not going to specifically replace him. But what happens sometimes when you have a guy like that is you can be too reliant on a guy like that, and you can defer to a guy like that too much. We've seen that with Indiana before. So I would say that I think that it might actually I'm not saying it'll hold.
I guess we should see this team play with Romeo.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that having Romeo holds you back. Like I know someone mentioned that one time when I was talking to them about it. But I'm saying that, a guy like Jerome Hunter being able to develop this year and not be the number one option. I mean, if you watch that guy in high school, he's a legit high-end guy who is still developing. The fact that he gets to sit back and kind of develop this year and then try and step into the light next year, the fact that Justin Smith, I think we're all expecting a lot of him, but he doesn't have to be the number one option this year, gives those guys a chance to develop and become front-end guys. And if there's two of them, maybe you replace what Romeo could provide. And if you've got Race Thompson and Forrester and Deron Davis and all these other combinations of guys, maybe they replace the production you got from a guy like Juwan Morgan. But again, I think that part of it is my faith that, again, a leader will emerge. Part of it is my faith that the coaching staff knows how to use all this talent. Part of it is my faith that they will recruit the next high-end talent. And part of it is my faith that these young guys who are freshmen are hungry and will develop and be better. And so, yeah, maybe not on paper, but it may be on paper. It doesn't look like next year they'll be better. But my faith in these guys, and I think that what I project happening is what makes it to me that they, and I've also always said, not that they will be better, but they could be better based on what they have and what the roster has. Obviously, it's all a projection, but I'm saying that if you look at the roster, they could be even better next year because of the disbursement of talent.
And it's hard to project because, I mean, Devontae Green could be like an honorable mention all Big Ten player this year for all we know. And then,
and then he's coming back for his senior year. Maybe there's your leader. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, so that, and I will grant some of that. It just, to me, you have two, known quantities, which again is odd to say about Romeo, but his talent, to build around what you want in Romeo. Next year's team just projects to have a lot more question marks, it seems like. So we'll see. Like, I'm not saying that I think things are going to fall off a cliff like they did, in the previous era.
Right.
I mean, I think we'll be really good next year. I just don't think that projecting it forward, it's hard for me to see how we'll be this year, but
quite frankly, in 3 months, we could be looking at this and being like, oh my God, they're going to be amazing next year. You know what I mean? Like or we could be looking at, how are they going to fill this, that, and the other? I'm obviously projecting at where the level of depth is going to be on the team and projecting that possibly a high-end talent or two is going to come in to add to that. And again, relying on the coaching and the leadership to emerge.
You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. Andy, hop in here.
I just think this is the beauty of sports where we can debate the merits of a team that we've never seen play against a team that we have no idea what the roster will look like. So,
we've never seen play.
9 guys could transfer. We don't know. Like,
oh my God.
What could go wrong? It seems like a great idea.
Yeah, I know. When Dane Fife is coaching the team next year, and the whole new roster, we're going to reflect back on this conversation and be like, why did we waste 15 minutes of people's time to these two teams? I will say, Ryan, in the chat, it's about even. It seems about split, and I feel like a couple of people have actually been swayed. They've said that you have a good argument. We've got Ryan is spitting fire, great argument. So some people are agreeing with you.
So half the people agree with me and half the people are wrong, is what you're saying?
There we are.
No.
I had to throw that out. I'm sorry, people.
We knew that was coming.
Hey, you know what? After yesterday, I'm on a roll, guys.
You are on a roll. You are on a roll. So anyway, that was the first segment of Ryan's being stupid again. But perhaps a misnomer, because you did present some good arguments. I still think you're wrong, and I think your you're being let's overly optimistic in every case to project that, at least as far as I look at it. But you made more of a reasonable argument than I thought you would. So I'll at least give you that.
Okay.
Would you like to make a closing statement?
I'm right. I think I'm right. No,
Ryan's wrong.
It's a great drop.
How dare you, Megan? No, I look, obviously it's a projection, and it's a lot of it is based on my faith in the recruiting, my faith in the development staff, my faith in these freshmen being hungry. I think the thing I love about this class coming in, these guys all seem hungry. Like they really want, not only do they want to be great, they want to get better and be a part of something. And I think that this group gets brought up a lot, but the movement, the recruiting group that came in, they got on campus and it just never felt like they had that gear to get to the next level. And these guys do. And we've seen it all off season. We've heard it all off season. And we've heard them talking about it all off season. They want to be like a legendary class. And there's something to be said for that when these guys are challenging each other. It's not just about getting better yourself. It's about making the guy next to you better, because then when that guy gets better, he makes you better. And so I just feel like there's something special about this group and what they're bringing. And I think they have a built-in leader in Rob Finney as well, too. So we'll see
that.
Yeah.
I thought we agreed never to mention the movement again.
Well, maybe you agree to that. I don't know. I don't pay attention.
Cautionary tale.
I don't pay attention.
Those who forget
Ryan just
are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, I don't pay attention when you're talking.
Ryan just talks and then takes his earphones out when other people are
exactly.
talking.
Yeah, I just turned it off.
Chimes in when we point at him. Okay.
I felt like we had an amazing conversation on all levels.
Thank you, Archie. Appreciate that. All right, coming up in our final segment, we're going to answer your questions, and we got a lot of time to do so too, including what would surprise us most this season, what record will win the Big Ten, and if this team could actually be better than the 2018, and a bunch more. That's next. Stick with us. Okay, that was 15:05. All right.
We got 10 minutes till tip off in Portland.
The beginning of the LeBron era.
LA Bron, baby.
How excited are you?
Here's why I'm excited. Look, the Lakers have had big name players before and all this stuff. What I'm excited about with LeBron is watching him in the preseason and watching him sort of over the summer. He looks like he's having fun again. Like, it doesn't look like he's super pressured, and it doesn't look like he's got the weight, because no one's expecting the Lakers to compete for a title this year. And he's also surrounded by all these young guys who I think are kind of giving him some energy. And you watch him during the preseason, and he just looks like there's no weight on his shoulder. And it feels like for the last 7 years, it's been championship or bust. Yeah. And he's just felt this, because he's a really, regardless of what you think of him or, all that stuff, he's just insanely fun to watch because he gets everybody involved and all that stuff. And there's just a joy when he's playing the game sometimes, like Magic, I think is the guy you compare to. And it looks like he's just relaxed and having fun. And I think that's the phase of the career we're in now, that he's just having fun. And, he moved to LA to hang out with his kids, and to everybody in his family's happy now and all that stuff. And there's just a relaxed sort of calm with him. So that's why I'm excited to watch, is just to see what he can do when he's got all this young talent around him, all this athleticism. What does he do when he's relaxed and having fun? And I don't know.
I think as much as I like him as a player, I like seeing LeBron as a dad even more. Like seeing him cheering at his kids' games and stuff. There's something about that that's so much fun to watch.
That honestly, it has been one of the great developments of the LeBron story, is seeing him as this overly super involved dad, but not a helicopter parent where he's but he's literally, you'll see him getting into timeouts during their AAU games. And then you see him they're posting videos at their house with a pool party and messing around with his kids. I mean, that kind of stuff. And he's savvy enough to let his fans into that side of his life now that he's, a full on.
And there are so many stories that you hear about athletes not being good dads, and I think it's great to have an example like that that's just out there, showing a different path. I think it's fun to watch, as a fan. And I think it's just helpful, from a society perspective, the visuals that you see help reinforce what you think is the right way to do things. So I really like it.
Yeah, I mean it's a great example that's being set for not only just regular people, but for other athletes to be like, hey, being involved, Dad, it honestly, here's the other thing, and the cynical part of it, it's going to help his brand being a good dad, quite frankly, in our society these days too. And
of course, it makes it more likable and relatable.
Exactly.
Like I can't relate to anything LeBron does on the court, but it's like, hey, he's looking at his kid with pride. I can do what LeBron can do.
Exactly.
See, that would be a drop if I ever got drops with myself. That always just feels awkward. Okay. So let's hit these questions. Yeah, let's hit these. We've got 12:22 for this segment. So let's not get into this. Andy, I'll go to you with this first one first.
Okay. Are you doing these in order?
Yeah, we'll pretty much just do them in order. I mean, do you want to look through here real quick? Like I thought these first three, these two are leftovers from last week, but I like the questions, so we'll hit them. The second one should be pretty easy to get through. I mean, if you want to look through real quick and
no,
just let me know in the chat if there's another question you want to do. But
okay, yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. We are wrapping up another week of talking IU basketball. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. And as is our custom here in segment number 4, we're going to answer your questions. You can always send us questions on Twitter, in our new Assembly Call community, or you can leave us a voicemail with a question throughout the week at 317-762-6253. That's 317-ROB-MAKE. And we've got actually a couple left over from last week that I want to get to. So this first one, guys, is from East Coast Hoosier, who says, not counting potential NCAA tournament results, what would surprise you the most if it happened this season? And that could be a positive surprise or a negative surprise, but just not necessarily like results-wise. Andy, what would surprise you the most this year?
I guess I would say, well, I mean, I'd certainly be surprised if I know it said not counting NCAA tournament results, but I would be surprised if they didn't make the tournament at all. Like, to me, that would be a pretty surprising development. And I would even say, like, I think Sports Illustrated released their Big Ten preview today, and they just go by their like 1 to 353 now rankings, and it had IU 6th. Like that would surprise me to not be in the top 4 or 5 in the league. So I guess those would be the things from a result standpoint. Nothing individual player wise came to mind, but maybe that I would be surprised if neither Romeo or Juwan made first team all Big Ten. I think maybe you could argue not both of them would, but I would be stunned if one of them did not.
Ryan, what would surprise you?
I agree with Andy. I think it's if you're not in the top 4 in the Big Ten, I think that would be a shock. I just think that I know we've been wrong about the Big Ten the last couple. Everybody has. They've been like, oh, it's down this year and it's great, and it's up this year and it's down. But this year it just looks like there's an opening to be really good, and to really take a shot and stab at the top of the conference. So that would surprise me if they're not top 4.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I don't know how you define a breakout, but I would be surprised if Justin Smith doesn't break out. Like, I'd be surprised if he's not a guy who at least is averaging close to double digits and probably pulling in 5-6 rebounds, and a guy where we look at and say, what, he really like took it to the next level. I think that
you expect to be able to rely on him though, like consistency wise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think he will be a more consistent player. And I think we saw it toward the end of last year. So I expect a continuation of that. And it's hard to really say that you'd be surprised about anything from a freshman either way, because we know how volatile freshmen can be. I will be surprised if Rob Finney is not a guy by Big Ten play that we're relying on for 12 to 15 minutes a game, maybe more. Like, I think I actually wouldn't be surprised if he's starting. This doesn't mean that I'm off the Devontae Green train, but I just think Rob has really impressed everybody, and everything you hear is positive. And we know what kind of maturity he has, and I think physically he's even more ready to play maybe than people thought. So, especially when you hear Archie talk about how far along his defense is. So I would be surprised, even as a freshman, if he's not a guy you can really count on in Big Ten play. Those would be the two things I would say. Good question, East Coast. Okay, this next question is from Joel. Andy, I'll send this to you to you first. will 15-5 win the Big Ten regular season? Of course, it's now a 20-game league schedule. Just just for some context here are the records for the Big Ten champions going back, starting from last year. In 2018, Michigan State was 16-2. 2017, Purdue was 14-4. 2016, Indiana 15-3. 2015, Wisconsin 16-2. Then you go 15-3, 14-4, 13-5, 16-2. So that's what it's been for about the last 8 years. Do you think 15-5 will be enough, or do you think someone's going to have to get to 16 or 17 to win it?
I don't think that would win it outright. I would feel relatively comfortable saying that, but I think you could see a tie for it at 15-5. If for no other, and I don't know that I'd say that in a lot of years, but I think in a year like this where, we talked about this a little bit last week, I think everybody's going with Michigan State to win it almost by default based on talent level and Tom Izzo, but I don't see them being head and shoulders above everybody else. And then we talked about how crowded that, those next tiers were, and you could see teams kind of beating up on one another within there. So I haven't looked at how the unbalanced schedule might affect that. Obviously a little bit less because now you've got a couple more conference games, but I could see that maybe splitting the regular season championship, but I don't think outright, but I think it's somewhat unique to the makeup of the league this year.
Ryan, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think that you're aiming at 16 wins if you want to win the conference this year. I think that is the aim. I agree with Andy. I think you could probably win it in a tie at 15-5, but you're aiming for 16. And that's if you want to win the conference, you got to figure out a way to get to 16 wins. I think that's the projection. Of course, anything can happen. It's volatile. It's this is the first time anybody's going to be playing 20 conference games, so we don't know how that's going to shake out. But I would say, yeah, you're aiming for 16 wins. That's the goal if you want to win the conference. And 15 could probably get you a win at a tie as a not outright title.
You're listening to Assembly Call Radio. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. We are answering listener questions here as we wrap up another week talking IU basketball. One of the things that's happened ever since Romeo committed is people have drawn parallels between this year's team and the 2008 team. That team had Eric Gordon, who was the last recruit, kind of the stature of Romeo, who came to Indiana. And they also had DJ White, one of the top 30, 40 players in Indiana history. So the parallels between Romeo and Juwan were quite clear. And so we got this question on Twitter. This roster seems similar with an experienced forward and a young 5-star shooting guard to the 2008 team. They ended with a 25-8 record. Could this team be that good minus the year-end debacle? And again, that was the team that was 17-1. They were ranked, I think, as high as 7th in the country. And then the bottom just fell out when all the Sampson nonsense happened. And big fan of the show, Dan Dockich took over for the final 7 games of the year. So, Ryan, as you reflect back on that team, how do you think this team stacks up to that team, especially when you look at the other guys on the roster? It's
an easy comparison to make. I think this team has more depth. I think this team is more athletic. It's going to be hard to know exactly what you've got with this team again until you see them roll out and you see these guys, how the rotations work out and things like that. You've got on this list that you think Gordon is better than Romeo. I think Gordon was a better scorer than Romeo is going to be, but I think Romeo is a better all-around player. But that again is kind of a wash because Gordon was one of the best pure scorers to come out of high school in a long, long time.
Gordon was also hurt for the second half of the year, which kind of stuck him.
But I think Romeo might be a better all-around player, maybe not as big statistic. He may not have the statistical year that Gordon had. I do agree that DJ White better than Juwan Morgan, as you said, one of the top 30, 40 players in IU history, and one of the most.
And if you gasp at that, go back and look at DJ's numbers. Yeah. He's really good. One
of the most underrated players to ever play at Indiana. And remember, he missed a year where he would have been amazing in that year across from Killingsworth and all those other guys, Robert Vaden and whatever. He would have been amazing that year, and he missed it because he hurt his foot. You've got Armand Bassett over IU's guards. At that point, Armand was decent. He wasn't what he became when he transferred. So I think
he shot 45% from 3-point range.
Yeah, no, he was a great shooter, and he really did contribute that year. But I think that and maybe individually, one-on-one, he's better than IU's guards, but I think there's more depth for IU's guards this year. So, but
yes, there is more depth, yeah.
That is a fair comparison, though. If you're looking at a team to compare this to, I think that's a fair comparison. And then you look at the ceiling that team had, and where they could have gone if not for the meltdown at the end of the year. I think that's a projection where you're looking at, okay, yeah, this team can sort of live up to that. Can it live up to that? And that's sort of a goal to live up to. That team, quite frankly, that IU team should have won the Big Ten that year. Absolutely, 100%.
Oh yeah. I mean, they should have had a 1 or 2 seed. I mean, that's what they were. That's what they were kind of on track for before the bottom fell out.
Yeah, exactly.
Andy, do you agree with that general assessment of that comparison?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like an easy one to make based on that, and yeah, I think you had a lot of JUCO guys and at least some older players that were, role players and guys coming off the bench for that 07-08 team versus a lot of guys IU's going to be counting on in those roles are going to be freshmen, albeit ones I would think we all believe are more talented. So
yes, certainly.
It's kind of an odd mix. Maybe the highs of the one team are a little bit higher in terms of the top end talent, but I think, depth top to bottom is probably better for this year.
You said this year's team is more athletic. Are you underrating the athletic ability of DeAndre Thomas and Mike White? And
I do not believe it is possible to underrate the athletic ability of DeAndre Thomas.
No. Let's see. Okay. Abe says, what effect, if any, do you think Juwan and Romeo being named to preseason watch list will have on the team's expectations? Correct me. I mean, do you guys, I don't think it really changes anything about the expectations.
Zero change.
Yeah.
Zero.
They're clearly in the top 20 at their position. So I don't think that really changes anything. If you had to guess, when do you think Trace Jackson Davis will make his announcement on college he will be attending?
Whenever Trace Jackson Davis is comfortable with making that decision is my answer.
I think he's going to sign in the early period, which is November 14th through the 21st. So I think it'll certainly be by then. Everybody that you kind of hear and read says sometime late October, and we're kind of getting there. So I would just kind of be ready at any point, really. I think the clock is ticking now. He's taken all of his official visits. So I would just keep your eye on Twitter. Because I don't know if an actual announcement will be set up, but I guess time will tell about that. Then maybe we can end on this question from our friends at the Hoosier Sound. What is one thing that you are all looking forward to the most as the season is about to start? So maybe let's say one kind of underrated thing or something that we haven't really talked about that much that you're really looking forward to as the season is about to start, Andy. Besides, of course, us being able to hang out like 4 times a week.
Oh, well,
that's going to be great, guys.
Yeah, that goes without saying.
The chemistry that the three of you have.
Just trail off after that. I mean, I'm really looking forward to see how all these new pieces fit together. I don't know that that's an under the radar thing to look at, but to me, I think that's the biggest challenge for the coaching staff is you have a lot of talent. We've all talked about that, but how does it all fit together and how does the rotation shake itself out? And that'll take time. And we'll figure out what that looks like in the end. But to me, being able to figure out how it's all going to come together and can it come together to be as good as we all hope that it will be is what I'll be looking at, particularly in the non-conference part of the season.
Ryan?
I'm interested to see how Archie Miller deals with having this much talent. He's never had this much talent before. He's never had these many guys who can contribute on a high level in college basketball at his disposal. How does he use it? Some guys mess that up, they're just because they don't know how to use it. How do you have, but does he have a plan? I'm sure he does, but what is his plan?
He has a plan for everything.
Exactly. No, but that's the question you ask is, okay, what's his plan? What is he going to do? How's he going to display this? How's he going to deploy these guys? That's fascinating to me because sometimes there have been times where teams have too much talent, where guys don't get enough minutes, they don't get into a rhythm, they don't find their way, and really talented guys fall out of favor or whatever because of it. How does Archie prevent that from happening? How does he make it so everybody feels like they're a part of this team and everybody feels, in the mix and ready to go?
Yep. All righty. Well, that will do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording, or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm kind of intrigued by some of the guys at the lower end of the roster to see what they do with their minutes early in the season. Like
that's kind of what I was getting towards. Like, do those guys get involved? Like, do they legitimately become a part of
Like, does anybody stand out? We're like, holy crap, Clifton Moore just scored 10 points in 2 minutes. Like, maybe
here's the thing about Clifton Moore. Here's the thing about Clifton Moore. I will say, I don't know what we're going to see from him, but let's say Evan Fitzner gets into foul trouble and Deron Davis isn't around, and you need length. I mean, you've got a 6'10" guy with long arms right on the end of your bench. Do they just go to him and say, "Hey, play defense. I don't care what you do on offense. Set screens for people, but play defense." I mean,
he had those 2 block shots.
And then what if he hits a turnaround jump shot? I mean,
I know.
What are we going to do then?
Could go all Jeremiah.
We don't have Mississippi Valley State on the schedule anymore.
That's true. Archie
I
seemed really.
I think Chicago State might actually be worse.
Well, that's true. Clifton already had his turnaround jump shot moment. It was those 2 block shots against Northwestern.
So, did you see Archie's interview with Jeff Goodman about the schedule? He looked so annoyed that there's 20 conference games. It was a very canned response that he gave. Yeah, he looked like he was just like there was just barely contained rage underneath the skin. Like he was just like, yeah, no, it's great. Really excited for the 20-game conference schedule. He's like, the crazy thing was when he was the funny thing was where he was like, well, looks like that's the way things are going. Like,
do you guys get the sense that he's having trouble hiding his excitement about Rob Finney? Because I kind of get the sense that he is.
I think he's having trouble hiding his excitement about a few guys.
Yeah,
I think because like he's not the guy who's going to be effusive about like he'll talk a guy up, but he's not like it'll be like, but he'll say like about Romeo, it'll be like he's great, but there's going to be an adjustment period. He like gives praise and then talks things down a little bit. But yeah, no, I think there's a few guys he's kind of just like,
yeah, and Jerome too.
Yeah, no, Jerome, Justin Smith. There's
fun excitement. It's gonna be a fun team this year. It really is.
They're gonna be really fun to watch. It's funny because I've gotten over the last couple of years the NBA I've never been an NBA guy, but over the last couple of years the NBA has gotten more fun. It really has, with all the like BS drama off the court and all that stuff. But also the teams are playing up tempo, fun to watch basketball, a lot of them. Like I was watching Phoenix the other night. I would never watch a Phoenix Suns game. They were really fun to watch with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and Josh Jackson and all those guys. I mean, that's a fun league pass team. And I was saying I think the Lakers are going to be fun to watch with LeBron and Lonzo throwing alley-oops to each other and, Brandon Ingram and all that. They're going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Indiana's going to be fun to watch. Like,
yeah,
there's guys who you want to see in an open court running, and getting a chance to do some stuff. And, but go ahead.
Let me ask you this as like a final question here. So we started the show in 2011 for that 2011-2012 team. What do you think has been the most fun start to finish season to watch? Because I think this season could rival it. But
I agree with that. But if you want to talk about, are you talking about high-end fun or like most rewarding at the end?
No, just the most fun throughout the year, most consistently fun. Because I still think that first season, because there weren't any expectations.
Yeah.
It was so fun all the way through the year. Like 2013, it even felt pressure watching it. It's like every game.
No, I mean, there were moments like that. One of the most fun games I ever had was the year they were number 1 and played North Carolina at home and just blew them out with
that was amazing.
That one like huge Oladipo dunk. And, I mean, that was maybe the most fun I've had watching a game.
And that season was great. Don't get me wrong.
Right. No, I know. But I know what you're saying. What I was going to say is I know what you're saying because you felt like so much pressure for them to win. The first year, we didn't expect them to win. And we expected them to have a good season, but not to win a title, not to win the Big Ten. And so I would agree with you. I think it was the first season. The most rewarding was Yogi's senior year, I think, because of what they went through and then getting to that point where they won that bit. Like when they beat Iowa at Iowa to win the outright title, that was as happy as maybe I've ever been as an IU fan in any.
That is how you're a champion.
That speech was just like, say what you want about Tom Crean. That dude knew how to talk. And that hit you right in the heart.
Like everybody knows that about Tom Crean.
No, I know, but I'm saying like there's plenty of things you can say about him, but you can never question the fact that dude in a poignant moment could always give a great speech, and that speech hit you right in the heart. It really did. I mean, it was emotional for
give
everyone.
a speech. That one was really good. That one was
no,
great.
yeah, I no, but I mean, in
That
a
was
big moment, he gave a great speech, and
yeah, the highs of that season were great, but there were
the lows were so bad.
The caveat of it had to be start to finish. There were many parts at the beginning of that were not enjoyable.
That's why I said that was definitely not the most fun. That was the most rewarding, I think, season because of where it started. I mean, I was in Maui with that team. It was horrible. Like they ruined a trip to Maui. Like, how do you do that? And
that was my wedding weekend.
I think I remember that. Yeah, you were. I was wondering why you weren't there. I remember I did like a solo show in my parents' basement because we were visiting for Thanksgiving. I was just like despondent talking to myself because it had been so terrible.
And I remember
Michael Dugan did a solo show. I think
the Wi-Fi sucked, so
this guy here looks sad. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was being in Maui. Like I have never. Like I love doing that tournament. You guys know that I talk about it all the time. I've covered it. I've been like almost 10 times and I've covered it like 8 or something or 7. And that was the most depressed I've ever been. And it was just such a like the juxtaposition of like sitting in those press conferences where it was just like, dude, this sucks. And then walking outside and it's like the most beautiful place in the world. And you're just like, I just want to go lay in bed. I don't even want to do anything. Like it was awful.
All right. Coach is here.
And I got to get off, but Coach, congratulations on joining the chat mob. Appreciate it.
Ryan.
Love you, buddy.
Yep, you're the
best. This was the most ridiculous ordeal of my life. No, it wasn't that bad. All right, guys. Love you all.
All right. See you, man. Go watch LeBron.
All right, we'll see you.
Yep. Later.
Coach, what's happening?
Not a whole lot. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, even though it's a little bit later this week.
That's all right. Glad to be here. And I appreciate the induction. I did think that you needed to pass it on to someone else because you've inducted me by asking me to be on the show. So,
I mean,
but thank you anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're synonymous with the chat mob. I mean, you've been a big driver of that happening. There's a lot better numbers in the chat mob now, but back in the day when we first started doing it on YouTube, the chats were a little more sparse. But, you were one of the people that was always in there. So we appreciate that. Shows like ours can't grow without the kind of, early ambassadors like you that like it and share it with other people. So that's one of the reasons why we're still doing what we're doing. So
I'm still technically challenged because when I got into the Zoom, I didn't mute the YouTube and I was hearing like 4 voices at once and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm still a rookie at this game, trying to figure it out. And finally I muted the YouTube and so then I could understand what's going on. But good show tonight.
Thank you. Where do you fall on that discussion that we were just having about the teams? Because I think this season is going to be really fun, and I hate to I don't want to jinx it, but I just kind of have that feeling.
I think we're in for a good season. How good, it'll depend on how all the pieces fit together. The thing I think that I'm going to try to be cautious with is it's been so long since we've been consistently good. Am I overly anxious to be good and putting a little bit of false expectations on because of the players we have? Or are we really still 2 or 3 years away from being that consistently good back in blue blood play? I think I did that a little bit with the football program the last 2 years, thinking that it was just ready to take the new step. And really with the new coach and some young players, they're playing really hard. They're doing a good job, but they're really not as good as all of us might have wanted them to be. So I think we'll make a run for the Big Ten championship. I think we'll be in the tournament, and I think we could get to the Sweet 16 and make a run. I think all the components are there, but I'm going to be a little cautious, wait and see how it all plays out, and just because I don't want to set myself up or anyone that listens to me up for these grandeurs of Final Four type teams. But it is going to be a fun season, I think, and it's the start of a consistent program again.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like
every year.
It's kind of like last year where in retrospect, you look back now and we all kind of like talked ourselves into it. Like we were squinting pretty good to try to see what we wanted to see with the team. But you don't really know that in the moment that you're doing it. So yeah, I want to tell myself that we're not trying to do that this year. Then maybe I'm not squinting as much as I probably did last year, but I think everybody's so excited all the time for the offseason, the new season has started. It's an annual exercise of trying to talk yourself into like Jerod, like you've said, the best possible version of every player, which rarely is how things actually shake out. But
I did that so bad last year.
I think you were not alone. You were not alone.
Yeah.
So I hope to get legitimate questions about what IU could potentially be in the NCAA tournament, as opposed to last year where everyone was bombarding me with wildly unrealistic scenarios trying to figure out like, so what if all these things happen? I'm like, what about this team have you seen that makes you think that this complex sequence of 11 events would be something that they'd be able to really
being the bracketology expert on a show for a team that isn't even on the bubble that has to be just a really painful and annoying experience.
Not ideal. Yeah. I'd like them to be safely in and debate like, oh, could they be like a 4 or a 5? Because then there was the few years ago that it was like they thought they might not make it. And then it was like, oh, where do you think they'll be? I felt like even though I have no pull in the situation whatsoever, I felt like everybody was like hanging on the, Osterman's like sending me stuff like, hey, can you write something up? What do you think about it? Whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to give people false hope, but so hopefully that won't be an issue this year, and that Brian and I can debate where they'll be, not whether they'll be in at all.
So, Coach, I want to ask you, you're, always here with us on Thursday nights. You come on and host the show. I see you on Ben Malcolmson's show. You're hosting your own shows. Like you're always willing to go help other people out, be on their shows. You're starting your own shows and bringing people on. What is your motivation to be such an active part of like the IU content community and such a generous part of it?
Well, thank you for that. It's two parts. Indiana University has meant a lot for me ever since I first stepped on campus in 1985. I think I've really come to appreciate Indiana University a lot more than when I was on campus, since being a big sports fan. And then, the ability to talk sports with people who have a decent way of discussing sports instead of a talk radio type of thing where it's passing the blame and trying to get the big hits. And not all talk radio is bad. I like to listen to Kent and Sterling and some of that, but I just wanted to be a part of that. And then giving back it's part of why I went into education as opposed to other places where I can make some money. Is you want to help people move ahead in the world. And there's a lot of value in that. And sometimes I question it, Jerod, when, things happen in the world of education, but there is a situation with a young man today, wrote an improvement plan and is a real tough young person and has some struggles. And the thing that he wrote on what he wanted to improve was real emotional for me because he really needs to get better. And so that's part of who I am as a person, as an educator. And so I've brought that into the podcast world. And then the other thing was I fell into it by watching you guys, finding you 3 or 4 years ago through social media and then following on the show. Most of what I've done, I've tried to steal or copy from you and Andy, not so much from Ryan. But
you just sat there and you found yourself saying, look, if these 3 idiots can do it, why?
Exactly. But from the microphones to the headphones and I'm way behind all the soundboard and all that. And like I said, I had some equipment failure. My microphone wasn't turning on tonight, so I'm still a rookie in that. But the curiosity to learn something new, and I've always had the ability to talk. If you guys weren't on, I'd probably be talking to the basement down here. So in the basement all by myself. So
might as well broadcast it to people. I know. I feel the same way.
So you might as well have someone listen to you. But speaking, we talked, Jerod, when you helped with the lesson, the videotape for my class. Communication is so important, and the podcast world it's just now, getting started. So that's kind of why I wanted to get into it. And it's a hobby right now. And at some point, maybe I'll try to monetize a little bit better than what I'm doing. But it's just an overall good thing, especially with Indiana University.
Yeah.
Hey, before you get into anything else, I'm going to run. It's a little late and yeah, a little bit. It's been a long day. Tough soccer loss for my daughter's team. And it was lost 2-1, headed one into our own goal on a corner kick on accident. And then gave up a penalty kick. So it was It was rough, but what are you gonna do?
Go sleep that one off.
Yeah. Well, I don't coach, so I don't know if it would make me feel better if I was coaching or worse, but I don't know. I will not mention anything about the officiating either. But
no.
Brian, congrats, and
thank you very much.
We'll talk soon, I'm sure. And thank you for your intrepid reporting down there. So
yeah,
are you heading back down for the game this weekend?
Yeah, we bought 6 pounds of beef to cook up for Philly beef steaks.
That's what I was gonna guess, since you usually try to do regional fare of the opponent. So
All right. The reporting's nice, but usually they go by about an hour before game time, and I've been a few hours into the tailgate, so I hope I heard everything right and reported it back.
Drink a lot.
Yeah. So
the typing was very clear, but yeah, whether your thoughts were or not, we don't know. But anyway, we appreciate it.
I remembered it right, but thank you.
It sounds good. We won't hold you to it. All right, thanks, guys.
It did sound good. All right, Andy. See you next week, man.
See you.
All right, let me ask you this. Now that you've been a viewer of the show, you've been on the show, what is one thing that you think that we could do better on this show, or that you think that we could improve, or that as an audience member you think would be interesting or useful to see? And I mean to put you on the spot, although I am, but I think you're in a unique position to answer that question.
I think, well, keep doing what you're doing. You keep adding segments and adding different things from the radio to, to getting my perspective as a coach, to having the interns, the stuff you do in the email, to the morning, the new banner moments in the morning. I would encourage you to just keep looking for, that next little edge that's going to bring the community together. The new community online with the Mighty Network stuff is really fascinating. I look forward to getting the notifications and seeing what poll is there, to keep bringing, those things together. And then just, don't do the same thing over and over again. Like, if you're going to do game balls again this year, that's fine, but maybe there's a different way of doing that. The only other thing I could suggest is, I found it fascinating since you invited me on the show is to see your run sheet, and not to make any more work, but I didn't know if like the Chatmob or the listeners would like to, see kind of an outline or something of the show, or have that available.
Oh yeah. I could always post that.
That's just talking off the top of my head that, I always have it up and now on a secondary screen when I'm on the show, so I can follow through and look ahead to what's going on. But one of the things that you do really well, and I try to share with my people in bracketology and our podcast, is keep looking to do things better. Whether it's obvious sound quality and the soundboard stuff that you're trying to do. That's been a big lesson of mine from you in starting up what we do, is to constantly try to get better. But off the top of my head, just keeping us informed on what's going on, I think is probably the best thing, and add a new twist here or there.
We are 90 minutes into the show, and we just got an Iowa troll in the chat. Did you see this? Kimberly's cabin. We've got a go Hawkeyes. This is dumb. Blah, blah, blah in the basement. Does his mom live upstairs? Thank you. Someone,
that's nice.
They didn't like the crack about Fran McCaffrey offering tractors earlier. That's probably why.
Yeah. So
that is probably why. Man, I'm just, it's been so awesome for us to have you on the show, and just to have you as a resource. I've learned a ton about basketball by having you on the show. So we're just we're really appreciative of everything that you've done for the show, and more than that, I mean, and I know I say this all the time, but I mean, the best part of this is the individual relationships that we've gotten to make, like, through the show. Right. Friends with Andy and Ryan, happened in large part because of the show, and same thing with you and, some of the other people that we get to see. So it's
Michael Dugan and I have now he stops by all the time. Rick Bozich stopped by the tailgate, and a lot of it's because of probably the show and the commentary, and you get to know people. That's what's nice. The other thing, and I'll speak for the fellow chat mobbers, and they'll get in if I'm wrong on that, but you make the listeners feel like a part of the show. And from the day one, when I was on YouTube and I typed in a question on YouTube and you answered, it was like, oh my gosh, they're answering a question. And I know that sounds really ridiculous for an old man, but it was like, okay, they're listening to that. And from Megan at the beginning on the call-in shows, that's been consistent. And now with the chat in YouTube and the ability to take your questions, that's been a really good thing that this show has done. And the other thing that, well, I got you here to compliment is you talk honest about basketball and you don't hide your fandom. Yes, we want to believe Indiana's going to win the national championship, and we probably talk a little too positively, but it doesn't get into the every game a horrible decision by this player and ripping this kid and ripping this coach, and it's not a angry message board place. And I think that's why you have so many viewers and you have so many people in the off season watch the show, because it is honest and talks about deficiencies, and that's why the chat mob has grown the way it has.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think you're right about that. And it's always kind of an interesting line to toe, to be able to critique the action, but not, make it personal about somebody. But I think it's important, especially, I know you can say, these guys are professionals, but they're not professionals yet. They're college players, and I do think they deserve a little bit more patience, because of that. Not that you hold them to, less of a standard than they can live up to, but it doesn't need to. And actually, even with professional athletes, it never needs to get personal. It never needs to get nasty. There's no place for that. So
you shouldn't tweet at someone,
Yeah.
but the thing I like that you guys do, again, it's if someone makes a mistake on the court, you point it out, but it's never seems like you're not rooting for them to get better the next time, or that you can see that they have the potential to do something a little bit different. And that is so unique in society right now because of the sensationalism of the sports and ESPN and all those places, and the clicks that are needed and the hot takes that are there. I think just to drive some kind of thought. Ours is always, this guard turned the ball over. They really can't turn the ball over if we're going to win. And we really believe they're going to not turn it over the next game is a lot better than saying the kid's horrible and he's terrible and kick him off the team. And I think that's why when I started listening back 4 or 5 years ago, it was just refreshing to find that kind of conversation. And then it's just morphed into, I have it on my calendar right now to remind me every Thursday and to sit down in the basement and entertain that Iowa lady. I would say no offense to the Iowa lady, but she's used to no defense, so that would be okay.
Oh man. I kind of asked this question to Megan. Any words of that you want to pass along to the chat mobbers, whether it be just advice or words of wisdom or anything that you have to say to a captive audience of chat mobbers?
Yeah, to the chat mobbers, I'll say thanks. You asked me back when we had to cover it live, and there were 3 or 4 of us that were monitoring the chat, and then we morphed over to the YouTube, and since then there's been a solid number, and it's entertaining and it's fun. I've gotten to meeting so many people already, David and Joel and Josh Wilson are the people who stopped by, and I hope that gets to be 10, 15, 20. Throughout the other day an idea about having a convention, a chat mob convention in the summer where we all meet in Bloomington and do a pub crawl type of thing. It is very enjoyable to be around people in this world where we're so divided in so many different things. And not to get into that, but we are divided in so many things, but no one asks about those divisions in the chat mob. No one asks about that when you stop by and have a beer and a sandwich at a tailgate or meet you at Nick's. And
yeah, the divisions are, should Devontae or Rob start at point guard? Those are the divisions.
That's a good, that's it. But my words of wisdom are thank you for showing up every Thursday, and thank you for participating, because it's, even when we started on YouTube, it was 3 or 4 lines everywhere, and I was trying to pump questions in to get people to participate. Without the people in the chat mob, it wouldn't. I mean, it shows I'm not trying to take anything away from you, but that's just added to the events post game and Thursday nights. So, I'm not going to speak for you, but we're only as good as the people who join in and are part of the community. I say that about teaching, if there were no students, I wouldn't have a job. And so my words of wisdom are thank you. You're the real reason that I got this shirt, which is nice.
Chatmob. Man, those shirts look nice.
They are sweet.
Nice.
So no, those are my words of wisdom. Keep supporting the Indiana program. If you're in the Bloomington area, go out and see the wrestling, the volleyball. Lots of good things are happening in Bloomington.
Chad says the only negative about the Chatmob is I sometimes lose track of the actual show. Probably for the best.
That is true.
Probably for the
you get
best.
in conversations like, okay, what did Jerod just say?
Is Ryan done talking yet?
Yeah.
Okay, two things real quick before we wrap up. One is I think it's going to be interesting once the season starts, because the off-season Thursday night shows, this is the hardcore fans are the ones who are here. It's going to be real interesting when we start doing post-game shows and we get a lot more kind of like random people who come over from Twitter, especially after big wins or big losses, to kind of see how they integrate, into kind of the established chat. What I feel good about is that I feel like what you just talked about, kind of the tone of the conversation that we like to have on the show is very similar to what we always see in the chat mob. And I feel like people who come in and aren't that will get flagged and ignored and properly berated quickly, which is very comforting, because anytime you're hosting a conversation like this, I worry about that, because I feel like it's kind of my responsibility to not have a chat that just goes off the rails and is doing that kind of stuff, and I don't have to worry about that at all, because I feel like that'll be easily taken care of.
And we worried about that when you decided to go off the moderated cover it live, that there wasn't anyone to throw out those things, but I forget who it was in the chat said just you can block them and not see them show up. And so if there's someone, the guy from Duke a while back was being a little crazy, and instead of engaging, I would encourage the chat mobbers to maybe engage a little bit, but when it goes off the rails, just block them, ignore them, and then they're talking to themselves. And but the last couple of years, I don't remember any game chats really getting. There's always one or two that gets a little bit negative. That's not the show's mode. But for the most part, it's been pretty positive.
I think we'll get more casual fans this year, because I think there's more casual interest, and I think more people kind of know about the show now. So that and again, just the attention that's on it because of Romeo and Juwan and all that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. The other thing you mentioned, you might have mentioned, that idea about having some kind of get together. Did you mention? Maybe you mentioned that last week on the chat or something. There was a night last week where I couldn't sleep because I started thinking about this. I think it would be kind of interesting, and this may be the worst idea ever. I have no idea. But to actually do some kind of conference, a day-long conference where we bring in guest speakers to talk about basketball stuff, bring in some coaches and do some education on, how you defend a pick and roll, and, some of the basic kind of basketball concepts that are specific to Indiana. So, the idea would be let's take the stuff that Indiana likes to run and maybe that, other big opponents like to run, and let's kind of teach it and give everybody a good frame of reference for it. Bring in some high school coaches from around the state. Of course, I'm thinking 10 years down the line, Archie Miller keynotes it and he does a little presentation at the end. Cause I always have to go from zero to all the way at the end. But do you think people would act if something like that cost $100 or $200 for a day, and you got lunch, and maybe it was in Bloomington, at someplace, I don't know how big of a place you'd need to hold that. I know it sounds good, but do you think people would actually pay for that and go to it? Because people go to business conferences, but that's to learn something specific for their business. This would be purely to learn more about basketball and become a more educated fan. But I feel like our fan base desires that and would enjoy that. I got real excited about that idea, but I don't know how good of an idea it is.
It would have to obviously be fleshed out a little bit, but you can expand that from basketball knowledge to bringing in some of the media too, that people from outside Indiana may not have a chance to interact with. Having Don Fisher present something, have members of the athletic department if they would want to do something like that. I think that the key selling point is getting people from outside Indiana back to Bloomington, whether they were they went to school there, that would be a big thing, or just the fans. You could tie into that tour of the athletic facilities. I don't know what the price point would be for a certain number and how many people you would want, but I would have to think that the Chatmob alone, we would get 40 or 50 people who would want to come in and have some sort of activity. And, you can either drive in or fly in on a Friday, have the Saturday afternoon be for the program, and then, pub crawl, dinner, whatever. I do think that when we have 79 people on a Thursday night on a radio show, and it's not a game, and you've had even larger numbers of that, I think there's a certain number given the right date.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, and people are saying in the chat, bring in former players and all that stuff, and that would be awesome, but it would take several years to get up to that, to where people would say, okay, they've been doing this for 5 years now. Yeah, maybe I'll go check this out. So it would have to grow slowly. But I think if it was just, if you got, some high school, I could think you could get high school coaches to do it. And we have high school coaches in our audience, who might be interested in doing it. It'd be interesting. One thing we're going to do, you and I talked about this, like doing kind of a basketball 101 series. So on this Monday show that we're going to start doing, by the way, we're starting a Monday show next week. It's going to be at 3 Eastern. It's going to be, Ryan and I are starting a mailbag. Mike DeCourcy is going to do a weekly segment, a Big Ten Roundup segment. And then once the season starts, we'll do a preview of the upcoming game. But then we're also going to do this basketball 101 series with Ben Ladner, who is one of our interns this year. We did like a dry run of it. He wrote this big article about how you defend pick and rolls, and he's got all these clips, and he explains it really well. So we're going to do a recurring series, just kind of going over some of these basic principles, which I think, it's been helpful for me. And I think I'll kind of gauge that, because if people aren't interested in that, kind of on the podcast and video, then they're probably not going to be interested in, going to some kind of event like that. But my hunch, knowing the audience, knowing this audience, is people will just eat that up, because it's going to be there's hardcore
off the
basketball
top of my head,
knowledge.
You could have IU Artifacts present a session.
Yeah, I know. I know. There's a session that fans can choose to go, or you can just have him for an hour or whatever, and he can present and show some of his stuff if he chooses to do that. There's probably a whole lot of things besides just the coaching aspect that you could add to a day-long, 9 to 4 or 9 to 5 convention type deal for a one-day thing. That would be really, really, really cool. All right, let's keep this in mind and flesh it out, because I actually, it's one of those ideas. I kind of thought it was crazy when I first thought of it, but it stuck with me, and I think it might have some legs. It would just, events like that are difficult to plan, especially if you're trying to plan it in a city that you're not living in. So that would be a challenge. But we have lots of people who live in Bloomington who could help out. Right. So,
get a block of hotel rooms.
Yeah.
That would be, I've thought about doing that for bracketology, and I have a few bracketologists around the country that were thinking about flying into Indianapolis and having a one-day session to build a bracket between us, all of us. So
that'd be really cool. Well, all right, let's keep talking about this stuff. You said earlier about the next level. That to me now is the next level, is like events, in-person events. We've got some good infrastructure set up for meeting online, which is awesome. That sustains you day to day. But having some more things like that where, to meet in person, kind of take the meetups to the next level, I think would be really cool. So yeah, a lot of good ideas in the chat too. That's what would make this work. So maybe we'll open up a discussion about this in the Mighty Network, and we can just get some ongoing discussion about it. We couldn't plan it during the season, but something to do in the off season. So, All right, Coach, thank you for being here. Congrats on.
Thanks again.
Thank you for everything. And we'll see you guys on Monday. So it'll be on YouTube just like this is, and I'll send out a link to it. So we'll see you guys.
All righty. Keep up the good work.
Bye, everybody.